Hello, Brian Weeks here again with another MMCD contract consideration. This video clip will cover the topic of deficiency management and holdbacks. I'm going to discuss defects and deficiencies, D&D, as they apply throughout an MMCD project. I'll cover how and when holdbacks can be taken and when they must be returned, and we'll finish up discussing how the owner has ongoing protection. First, it's vital to understand that quality is, or should be, the number one concern of owners. The MMCD is designed to build municipal infrastructure having life cycles of multiple decades. Good quality will be appreciated forever. Poor quality will be a significant problem long after the project's price or schedule difficulties are forgotten. Part of the role for which the owner appoints a contract administrator is to be the owner's eyes and ears on the site to evaluate the quality of the work. However, in fulfilling this role, the CA must be impartial and judge fairly the quality compared to the standards in the contract documents. While the CA can delegate this role to one or more inspectors, if that happens, the inspectors also inherit the obligation to be impartial. But no matter what the CA sees, does not see, or even accepts, if there is a quality failure, it is the contractor's responsibility to fix the defect or deficiency. GC 4.12.1 makes it clear that even an acceptable test is not adequate to get the contractor off the hook if a defect or deficiency shows up later. I guess we should define what I mean by defect or deficiency. It is interesting that the MMCD does not define these terms. I guess we figured they were obvious enough not to need special attention. Anyway, in my view, a defect is where something is built wrong or has been damaged, whereas a deficiency is where something is missing, either totally or partially. However, the two terms are often used interchangeably. On a properly managed project, defects and deficiencies are evaluated almost on a daily basis, not left for inspection near the end. Ideally, they are logged into a running deficiency list, and a field memo is generated to notify the contractor at the time each item is first found. Then, at each regular site meeting, the current deficiency list should be an agenda topic. As it is discussed, the CA should try to get a commitment as to when the defect or deficiency will be rectified. As each one is resolved, that fact should be noted on the list together with the date. Here's a typical deficiency list which would be used for both defects and deficiencies. Note there is a column for the estimated value. As I'll discuss in a minute, it's not necessary to complete this column's entries until substantial performance. The reason the estimated value is not needed during most of the project is that the MMCD does not allow for deductions related to defects and deficiencies on monthly progress billings. While preparing each progress payment certificate, the CA will refer to the list to ensure that the owner does not pay for items on it. Should he or she find that an item previously paid for is now on the list, the proper thing to do is to make an appropriate negative adjustment to the quantity to date so that the erroneous payment is deducted. As mentioned earlier, previous acceptance, whether it was correct or incorrect at the time, does not bind the owner to pay for anything not meeting contract requirements. During the project, it may happen that a defect is noticed that the CA judges is not expedient to repair or replace. In this case, the CA can determine an appropriate discount for the owner to take on the next progress payment. The deduction must reflect the loss in value to the owner created by accepting something less than the contract specified. Note the specific wording. The CA needs to keep this in mind when evaluating the discount. This situation might occur at any point during the project. A simple example might be a small area of paving which was laid slightly less thick than required. Rather than trying to overlay or remove and patch, the CA might determine the loss in long-term value to the owner and authorize a permanent deduction. Of course, this needs to be confirmed with a change order, notifying both parties of the adjustment. Determining the correct amount can be quite complex. Nevertheless, it is the CA's responsibility to make that initial decision. Either party can challenge that decision by following the disputes protocol. When the contractor applies for substantial performance, the CA must inspect the work and finalize the deficiency list, and that list is now complete with the estimated values for the remediation of each item. This estimate should be at the 100% level of cost to rectify. Then, the test for substantial performance is calculated based on the total of the deficiency list values. If that value is less than the limit specified by the Builder's Lien Act, as shown here, the certificate must be granted and the lien clock starts to run. However, when determining the amount due to be paid at this point, the value of the deficiency list is doubled to calculate a deficiency holdback per GC 18.4.2. Here's a sample substantial performance certificate showing where the 200% value would be entered. As you can see, the deficiency list is required to be attached to this certificate when it is issued. Note that our standard template provides a place to list delivered but unresolved claims. Neither the Builder's Lien Act nor the actual language of the MMCD require this, but we think it's a useful idea. At the time of substantial performance, the CA can apply a special holdback for incomplete work. This is a situation where some work remains to be completed through no fault of the contractor, but the owner is concerned that the remaining unpaid amount is insufficient to hire someone else to complete the work if the contractor fails to return. Let's use an example. Say the job is substantially performed, except that a $10,000 landscaping item could not be completed due to weather. The owner is concerned that should the contractor not return in the spring to complete this work, the $10,000 item remaining in the budget would be insufficient to hire another firm to do that work. In this circumstance, the CA would determine an estimate of what it would cost for another firm to come in and do this one sole item. Let's say that that's $15,000. In this example, the CA would authorize a $5,000 holdback to protect the owner. Obviously, if the contractor returns and does the work as expected, he will receive $15,000, not the $10,000 stated in the schedule of quantities and prices for this item. Prior to substantial performance, if a lien is filed, the lien amount plus 15% is deducted from money owing to the contractor. It does not come from the lien fund. The contractor has the option to have the lien removed, in which case the holdback is returned. But once the lien clock starts, claimants have only 45 days to file liens. If there are no liens, normally at 55 days, the owner must pay the lien holdback funds to the contractor. However, once it is known that there are funds due to the contractor from the former lien holdback fund, those funds revert to normal payable status. In other words, if new deficiencies are found, the amount payable may be reduced by the additional deficiency holdback. Now remember, this can only happen between 45 days after substantial performance up to the date of total performance. Should this happen, the normal requirement for appropriate documentation to both parties must be completed by the CA, as it is only the CA who can determine what the two parties are entitled to as far as payments and offsets. Now, at total performance. Since the contractor cannot get to total performance with outstanding deficiencies, it is clear that the final payment must include all remaining holdbacks net of allowed offsets. Then, for the 1-year period following substantial performance, the contractor is obliged to rectify any discovered defects and deficiencies about which the owner has provided notification. Unless our standard documents have been modified, the owner does not have the right to impose any maintenance holdbacks, warranty period security, or the like. The owner has already paid for a performance bond, and it covers the maintenance period. If the owner is having difficulty in getting the contractor to respond and rectify deficiencies, the owner can involve the bonding company for additional leverage. But the owner's protection goes beyond the maintenance period. As shown here, GC 25.3.1 keeps the contractor responsible for quality to contract standards even after the maintenance period expires. Of course, the holdbacks and performance bond no longer exist, so the owner has to pursue a recalcitrant contractor in court. Nevertheless, the contractor's ongoing obligation is clear. So to summarize, number one, in the long term, quality is the most important factor to the owner. The contractor has ultimate responsibility and total control to meet all contract requirements for quality. The CA is the owner's representative, watching out for defects and deficiencies, but must be impartial when doing so. Number two, defects and deficiencies should be identified and rectified on an ongoing basis, not just at the end of the job. Number three, holdbacks for defects and deficiencies can only be taken at substantial performance. Number four, all holdbacks must be paid out by total performance. The owner has protection during the maintenance period via the contract's performance bond, and further common law rights even after the maintenance period ends. I hope this has helped clarify this contract consideration. Please check our website for further assistance and to see what other topics are presented in this series. Thanks for watching.